Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here to recognize our 2017 TWRA Hunter Education Instructor Hall of Fame inductee, Sam Venable. I've got a few things I want to share with you before I bring Sam up here. Sam's written for the Knoxville News Sentinel since 1970, first as outdoors editor, and since 1985 as a columnist specializing in humor. In September of 2014, he retired from the daily duties at the News Sentinel, but continues to write twice a week in a column on featured sections. Sam is a native of Knoxville. He is a 1969 graduate of the University of Tennessee with a BS in journalism and a minor in forestry and wildlife management. Prior to joining the News Sentinel staff, he worked as a police reporter and feature writer for the Knoxville Journal and the Chattanooga News Free Press. Sam is the author of 13 books, and he is a member of the East Tennessee Writers Hall of Fame, class of 2009, and the Tennessee Journalism Hall of Fame, class of 2014. He's a winner of more than 3 dozen state, regional, and national writing awards. Sam has been widely published outside the newspaper field. He sold his first magazine article as a senior in college, and since has compiled more than 150 periodical credits to his record. In recent years, Sam's become popular as a comedic entertainer and currently teamed with 3 other entertainers: TV personality Bill Landry, singer, storyteller Elizabeth Rose, and hillbilly funnyman Jim Claiborne on the Talk is Cheap comedy tour. In his spare time, Sam enjoys hunting, fishing, hiking, and swimming. He has a wife, Mary Ann, and 2 grown children. A little bit about Sam's hunter education background. He was the outdoor editor of the Knoxville News Sentinel when he helped begin the Knoxville News Sentinel Hunter Safety Clinic in 1973 in Knox County. It became an annual event that proved to be quite popular with the readers and the children. When he transferred out of the Knoxville News Sentinel Sports Department in 1985, the program continued under the guidance of several other outdoor editors. Unfortunately, under today's times, it became a victim of the sweeping budget cuts which will befall the newspaper industry and is no longer offered. Nonetheless, thousands of East Tennesseans, young and old, have earned their hunter safety card through this process and helped students develop a responsible attitude towards firearms and hunter safety. There's also a reason that we have our John Sevier Hunter Education Center, because a lot of those classes were taught either Halls High School, and then they came out to the John Sevier Range. And so in 1999, we were able to acquire the facility there and start managing it for public use. A little bit about our Hall of Fame. We have one of our inductees, Billy Long, here. Also, Director Carter is inducted into the Hall of Fame. Tony Proffitt, one of our retired wildlife officers, it's passed now, was inducted into the first class for our Hall of Fame for instructors. So if I could have Sam come up. Sam is our 20th inductee into the TWRA Hunter Education Instructor Hall of Fame. And with that, I do have a print from Robert Christie that we've awarded all of our Hall of Fame inductees. So it's sort of a traditional print that I'd like to give Sam, and then I'll give him the stage.
Good.
Stop that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. Let me get over here. I told Billy Long I need one of his
just
walking
wait.
sticks now. I do appreciate this. I'm sorry I was not able to make it to the workshop at Henry Horton this summer. I do tours for the Smoky Mountain Heritage Center in Townsend, and I had one that weekend I couldn't get out of. Just a couple of quick things, because I know you got lots of stuff to do here. Anytime you start inducting old geezers in the Hall of Fame, I know it's time to be heading out. You know, it's checkout time. I'm going to tell you how far back I go in this outfit. When I was with the New Sentinel Covering Outdoors before Ed Carter was even hired, that far long ago. Matter of fact, Ed, I think you were doing stuff for the county fairs for the wildlife agency. A couple other things. I noticed you had Greg Julian's name up there as one of Bill Stiver's former assistants up there. I remember when Greg Julian was born, for heaven's sakes. One of my former colleagues, Roland Julian, is his dad. So I watched Greg grow up. I was in a dove field some years ago, not too many years ago, and a young officer came through checking licenses, and we had a chance to just sit down in the shade and talk a little bit. And I started asking, well, do you know so-and-so? And he, no, I don't think so. Well, what about such and such? And he said, yeah, I've heard his name. He's been long retired from the agency. We had no connections whatsoever. But I'll tell you one other thing that I have seen changes. You know, I don't have to tell any of y'all how the changes in the fish and wildlife picture in Tennessee, but probably the most dramatic is every time that I drive through a subdivision around Knoxville and have to stop for turkeys to cross the road. I can remember turkey hunting when you'd come in about noon. Was you hear anything? And you say, I'm not sure. It could have been a dog barking. I'm not. It could have been a dog, or it could have been an owl. But it sounded like a turkey, and that's the changes that are out there. And when Tommy told me about this award in the first place, I said I really feel a bit of a sham in accepting this thing, because there were so many, dozens and dozens of people that helped the New Sentinel. Billy Long out there, one of them. Ben Jones. Harry Hoy, Jim Wilbanks, all these guys. Billy's still around. The rest of them have headed on to that happy hunting ground. But I appreciate all the work they did. They were the ones, that they did the work. All I did was make the coffee and type up a few forms. But I'm really happy to accept this award on their behalf. And I thank you all so very, very much. Appreciate it. I'm going to fish a little later, but yeah, okay. What do you want to do?
Your tea, boss.
Yeah, I might. Say, when you get the film back from the drugstore, let us look at the next one.
That'd be great. Please.
Madam Chairman said I could say just a word or two, and I promise not to take long, but I was our hunter education coordinator back when Sam was doing the New Sentinel clinics, and I remember we were just getting started, and we thought there might be 30 or 40 people come to this thing. I can't remember. It seemed to me there was like 350 or 400 people. We were going, what are we going to do with all these people? But it really worked out great. And Judy and Becky from our Region 4 office, they both worked. They had to work with Sam. But thank you all for all you've done there too. But I want to mention Billy Long as well. Billy used to do double duty for us. When Billy was in the same stuff with Sam and I and a bunch of other people, he was also in the Coast Guard Auxiliary. So one day he would be teaching boating safety classes, and the next day he'd be teaching hunter education classes, and really appreciated all he's done over the years. And Sam's been a friend. We'd hiked to Mount LeConte 2 or 3 times together and spent the night with him one or two. And this is the last thing I want to tell you about him. This is how much of a sportsman Sam Venable is. We're standing there on the back porch shooting a bull, and I kind of said, "Wow, I hurt my finger on your screen door." And he said, "Oh, those are my notches." And I looked, and for every deer he's killed standing in the back door, as he stands on his porch, he notches it there. So anyway, Sam, thank you, and Billy both for everything you've done. Tommy, appreciate you recognizing them.
Thank you, Director Carter. And I'll just say, Sam, oh my goodness, it's such an honor for you to be here with us. I came to Knoxville in 1990. Had the privilege of serving in the House in 98, so that 99 opening was a really big deal in South Knoxville. And I love your work. It's so good, and it has given me moments of pleasure at a whole lot of different times in my own life, and it's a gift. So thank you for sharing it with not only Tennesseans, but folks all across the country and the globe. We really appreciate you. Thank you. Congratulations. And I want to hear that duck hunting story, if you don't mind, sometime soon. Great. Excellent. With that, any other comments or from members of the commission? With that, I'd like to go ahead and recognize Frank Fish, or Fiss, as we like to call him, properly.
That's kind of you. Yeah, this is the time of year when we like to recognize some of our best in our fisheries division, and it's always a difficult decision. Our committee, we got several nominees this year for both categories, but I'll start with the technician of the year first, and we'll go to the biologist of the year. Rob Thayer is the 2017 Fisheries Technician of the Year. He was nominated by his coworkers at Telco Hatchery, where for his dedication to the hatchery, its staff, the trout, and its visitors. And such dedication is really not rare among hatchery staff, but Rob has demonstrated exceptional skills and ingenuity in the past year. If you've ever been to Telco, it's a very old facility, and its water intake structure has been a chronic challenge to hatchery staff and the trout in their care. It'll clog up and kill fish and hurt people trying to clean it out. So among other issues that they'd have to deal with, the hatchery staff would often have to wade into the river to remove leaves and debris to ensure that the intake wouldn't clog. Rob used his fabrication skills this year to repair the intake and construct an elevated catwalk to allow staff to move more safely in the creek to work on the project. It's estimated that these efforts would have cost about $23,000 for us to do if we had hired someone to do it. So we had Rob. Rob also designed and constructed the bed of their new hatchery stocking truck. His design has greatly increased the efficiency of their stocking efforts and has improved the safety of the stocking crew. Rob has also played a critical role in the design and operation of a new low-head oxygenation system that they're getting the kinks out of right now to improve water quality for trout. Rob even got involved in bridge maintenance. I guess the bridge over Tellico River there at the hatchery is starting to get rusted, and that could be a problem over time. Rob received U.S. Forest Service approval and repaired the bridge to ensure that everyone can safely cross the river to the hatchery. Furthermore, Rob has outstanding interpersonal skills which allow him to clearly communicate with a diverse group of people you will often encounter at Tellico Hatchery. We get tens of thousands of visitors at Tellico Hatchery, and Rob's among the team there that talks to them, explains to them what we're doing there. Lastly, Rob's years of experience in hatchery operations has given him the competency to not only perform, but to teach others the processes needed to maintain a healthy trout hatchery. John Ellis, the new current manager, said that Rob has been instrumental at helping him get acquainted with the hatchery. So congratulations, Rob. You are our 2017 Technician of the Year. If you'd come up, we have a plaque for you and a print as well. there was a tree down, I thought Rob might be pulling it out of the road. Yeah. You want to set up there? Wait, let me take this out. One more. Hey, Rob, it's over. This is your print. Sure. Rob?
Once again, congratulations, and thank you for your incredible service to the state. With that, I'll recognize Frank again for
Yeah.
honor number 2.
Here we go. Yes, this year's Biologist of the Year is Dwayne Oyer. Dwayne is a native of East Tennessee. He went to Morristown High School and graduated in 1969. He's a graduate of the University of Tennessee in the forestry program with wildlife emphasis in 1974. He began his professional career with TWRA in 1975 as a CETA program employee at Buffalo Springs Hatchery. And this was the 1973 version of the AmeriCorps, something like what they would have today. And he worked in this program for 5 years as a fish culturalist. In 1980, Dwayne became Wildlife Manager 1, working for both fisheries and wildlife programs. And on the fish side of that, he served on the reservoir crew leading fish survey work on reservoirs. In 1986, Dwayne was promoted to manager of Buffalo Springs Hatchery, which is a trout hatchery in Granger County, where he currently serves in that capacity. During his tenure at Buffalo Springs, Dwayne has dealt with and overcome many issues at the hatchery, including water supply, effluent management, and pathogens. Through these and all other routine duties associated with the operation of the hatchery, Dwayne has always done his best to manage the hatchery and produce a quality product for the public to enjoy. He has overseen many hatchery improvements and upgrades over the years. Some of these include a new water line, new effluent settling raceways, and the installation of a liquid oxygen system, all of which have improved the overall hatchery production. In 2017, Dwayne took on a new responsibility of reestablishing the trout stocking program on the West Prong, Little Pigeon River in Sevier County. This is one that had been closed for years due to contaminants, and they were eager to get fish in as soon as possible once the contaminant ban was lifted. So he was able to get fish there in a timely manner to start that program again. In addition, he provided much needed assistance to the city of Gatlinburg when their trout program was significantly altered because their trout facility was essentially burnt to the ground in 2016. They lost all their ability to pump water and hold fish. So he held additional trout at his facility, which is a kind of a juggling act for a hatchery manager, and that allowed the Gatlinburg to use those fish during the 27 stocking season without interruption. This enabled Gatlinburg to continue their program, and he also assisted the city with stocking efforts when his time and personnel had a chance to do so. He routinely provides fish for several special events throughout the year. These include the Wounded Warrior events, Project Healing Waters, and Trout Unlimited fishing camp events. And he also hosts a youth fishing event at his hatchery every year. Over the past 41 years, Dwayne has been a dedicated employee in his service to the agency and the citizens of Tennessee, especially trout fishermen. Congratulations, Dwayne. If you come up, I want to give you this plaque.
Dwayne, congratulations. And just as a note, Director Carter just shared with me that in the 41 years that Dwayne's been with the agency, this is his first commission meeting. And we are so thankful you're here with us and glad to honor you. Yeah, as Commissioner Cox just said, you've been lucky so far. We're not sure what happened today, but thank you. All right, with that then, before we go into action from committees yesterday, if it works for everyone, we had two things. One, we had an excellent retention and recruitment committee meeting this morning. I want to thank Commissioner Cox and Commissioner Stroud for their leadership and Michael May and Ed Carter's leadership. We've got some exciting things coming on how we can think about not only supporting the sportsmen of our state, but also recruiting new sportsmen and families to enjoy the outdoors. Really exciting potential there. Secondly, yesterday we had very thoughtful discussion and important debate on CWD, the challenges that we face as a state, and our mutual desire to really focus on eradication and keeping this out of our state. And so I want to ask Ed Carter to come and visit with us about his experience at a recent national conference, just to, if anything, continue that conversation briefly. We won't be rediscussing CWD today, although I'm sure we'll be having a conversation about it in the months to come again, because it's so very important, not only in our communication strategy, but in species management. But wanted Director Carter to take a moment to share with us about your recent trip.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't rehash a lot of the things we said yesterday, but just kind of highlight a couple of things that came out of. There are two important committees that go on in the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies that relate to chronic wasting disease. One is our Wildlife Disease Committee, and the other is a special subcommittee just on chronic wasting disease. The United States Department of Agriculture made quite a long presentation during the meeting, as did Dr. John Fisher, who chaired the meeting for us. And Dr. Fisher is the head of the Southeast Wildlife Disease Cooperative down in Athens, Georgia, that all the southeastern states come together with to try to do sampling and prevention and all those kind of things. So just to highlight a couple of things, and some of those are in the brochure that we were handed yesterday, but a couple of, I thought, things that were very important was that the certification of herds that has been going on for quite some time with USDA. They acknowledge that while it's important to know those things, that in their estimation they said it could work better or be more effective. Essentially what they said was that certification of herds, even though they've been certified as disease-free for a number of years, they have found several different certified herds that now have CWD that have occurred within those certified herds, which means it goes to we were talking about, what about urine that people use for scents and so forth in hunting. Those were trying to become certified herd producers. That puts a whole nother slant on that now that we know that certification may not really mean what we thought it did several years ago. They also were interesting to note that there are two different states that have gone through all the way to their state Supreme Court. One is going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court if they'll agree to hear it. It relates to areas where captive herds had been and CWD had been found, and those herds were depopulated. But they now have positive evidence that up to 16 years later, if deer or other cervids are introduced into that same area, even with no deer in there, that they develop the disease just from the ground contamination. So the courts are not ruling for or against CWD just in the fact that the jurisdiction of a lot of wildlife agencies doesn't go to prevention of land and the prevention of land use. So in some states, they actually have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars buying land to essentially quarantine it so that other animals can't get in there, literally building fences around that area so that the contamination doesn't occur. One of the bigger things that came out of it, and I'll kind of end with this because there were lots of things that were happening, but that there's talk now about can humans develop the CWD symptoms by eating contaminated meat or meat from deer that we know have CWD. We don't know for sure, and that the jury is still out on that because the study is still ongoing, but they have documented in 2 different cases, one with monkeys and one with smaller mammals, that by allowing them to ingest that meat, they did develop the CWD type symptoms. And that, so some of the states are already looking, what does that mean going forward in terms of their Hunters for the Hungry program and all those kind of things? Where does that leave them? A number of states have now started offering, and we talked about this a little yesterday, a way to have deer tested. And as we mentioned yesterday, I won't go back through all of that, but we're going to try to look at a way to offer that. And it means a delay in processing, usually 2 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on how long it takes to process it. But those hunters who would like to know, that we're probably going to try to find a way that can occur. So I'll just say that there are a lot of things going on. The brochure that AFWA put out, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, that we gave you yesterday, will outline a lot of this in more detail. But in the next 2 weeks, a survey is being done again through all the fish and wildlife agencies in the U.S. and also our Canadian provinces are involved in this. And as you well know, CWD has occurred in some of the herds in reindeer and caribou. So anyway, we're looking in a North American scale to see what's happening with CWD. And I guess I'll end with saying one of the things they certainly were cautious about was the movement of deer taken from a CWD state or any other state where we don't know that CW is occurring, because CWD doesn't show up sometimes for 5 to 10 years. And so a deer that was harvested at 5 years and not knowing that it had CWD could still be brought into the state. So they really urged the states to look at the certification of, as we talked about, clean skulls, clean meat, all those kind of things before it's brought in. And the words closing the borders are the wrong ones, because we don't close the borders. We just say if you're bringing deer in from these states, you need to follow certain procedures. Kentucky has done that now, our state to the north, and we were kind of worried about them earlier. So that's occurred there, and several other states are following suit. And I think 4 of our border states that have it, I think 3 of them had new cases of CWD within this last year, some of them outside their containment zone. So I'll just say all that to say there's a lot going on. I left the meeting really depressed, thinking of where it could go, but at the same time, I know y'all are trying to put together some measures that will help us keep Tennessee CWD free, and that's where we want to go. But thank you, Madam Chairman, and we'll report back as we get more information.
Thank you, Ed. Any questions from members of the commission in the report? Great.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Cook, then Commissioner Stroud.
So, Ed, was there any discussion in other states of where they've had captive herds that they've prohibited captive herds? I know that some states they no longer are going to allow more herds, but have they actually removed the herds?
Only in those, to my knowledge, the only ones that they've actually removed are those that have had a CWD finding, and they've depopulated that whole area, where even in some that weren't specifically contained, they've depopulated within specific areas. They also are looking at the movement of any kind of live cervid as being something that should not happen, and because of all the problems that go. And captive cervids has been primarily the place where most CWD outbreaks have occurred.
And one more question. I know that, I forget the name of the association, but basically the Southeast Region Wildlife Management agencies.
Yep.
There's some discussion about possibly every state just closing to importation, so you basically keep your deer within your state. How's that going?
It's still just in the talking stages, because in some places it would require legislation or rules, and that's not in place. But they're certainly urging states to be as cautious as they can about any movement of deer into their state, especially if they're CWD free at this point, and to do everything you can to keep that from happening in your state.
Thanks.
Commissioner Stroud?
He asked the question.
He's so good, isn't he? All right. Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Commissioner Box.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Carter, when they did the small mammal and the monkey test with the meat, was it a CWD positive deer with no symptoms, or was it already sick, or do we know if that made a difference as far as?
They took meat from a CWD positive deer.
With no symptoms, really, just positive?
Well, I'm not sure how they picked them, but
Okay.
yeah, they made
I'm
sure
just
that it was a positive sample before they
Okay.
fed it to those.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ed,
Thank
very,
you.
very much. Excellent. With that, we'll move into reports out from committees. And just as a reminder for our partners in the public who may have comment on anything, I would love to hear any discussion on these. And so if you have comments, we'll recognize you at each agenda point when we have action. And if someone has a comment, we would allow up to 3 minutes. Just give us your name, but we welcome your input before we make our final decisions on these matters.